Hello, this is the first in a set of videos to introduce you to lists, which are a data structure we can use in a variety of programming languages, but we're going to look specifically at Python. Let's just start though by talking about what a data structure is. So data structures are specialized formats for organizing and storing data. It's really important to recognize that there are lots of different data structures out there, and as you become a more proficient programmer, you'll come across other types and experiment with them. At this stage, I just kind of want to introduce two ideas you want to make sure you think about when you're working with a data structure. The first one deals with size, and broadly speaking, we have two classifications of data structures. We have something called a static structure, and that's where the size of the structure is fixed. So essentially, when you first make the structure, you first create the structure, you indicate the size. And that size can't change. The second type is what we call a dynamic data structure. And the size of the structure is flexible. This means as more data is added, the size will change to suit the needs. The second thing you want to think about when you're thinking about a data structure is type. So what I mean by this is that some data structures hold only data of the same type. Some data structures hold data of different types. And again, this is the type of thing you want to think about as you become a more proficient programmer, because this can have an impact on the design. Now, at this stage, you're going to come across two types of data structures. You're going to come across lists and arrays. And arrays happen to be a static data structure. That take data of the same type. And lists are dynamic data structures that take data of a variety of types. And in fact, we're going to focus on lists initially with Python, but there'll be some other videos later on that will talk about arrays. Okay, with all that said, let's just kind of dive into it. So what you know right now is if you want to make a variable, something like this, you could make that a, and that's going to create a variable called a and store 4 in it. Pretty straightforward. Well, let's say I had a whole collection of variables and I wanted to kind of put them together. What I could do is I could make a list. And I could make my list. I'm going to call my list list. And I indicate a list by using square brackets. And now I can put a whole bunch of pieces of data in there. So this list here, you say list has a length of 6 and indexes 0 to 5. And this is something that if you've studied strings, and for my students, I'm assuming you've already looked at strings. If you haven't, that's okay. You know, we'll talk about them, but it's all right. You'll be able to kind of follow along. When we talk about lists, we think about the same thing, the length of a list and the indexes, because that's how we access the information. So in terms of indexes, we see it has index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we indicate to access the data, in the list, we need the list name and the index. So for example, we know that if I print A, that's going to print out whatever is contained within A. Versus if I print out list, the question is, which piece of information is printed out here? And if we run this, we'll see that what ends up getting printed, and we'll just adjust this so you can see, is the entire list. And you can see that down here. So the way I actually access individual parts is I use the square bracket notation. And it's the same as accessing a string part of a string using the square bracket notation. So if I say list at index 0, this is saying list at index 0, it's going to print out whatever is located at index 0, which we see is the 1. And let's just kind of pull this up so we can see it all. There we go. There is list at index 0. I can print list at index 1. This is list at index 1. And I'm going to give this a whirl, and there it is. There's my 2. Now, I can print list at index 5. I look up here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which will print 6. And sure enough, there's our 6. Now, interestingly, this is linked now to strings. We talk a lot about strings, that if we ever want to access the last index of a string, we don't actually write the number, we use the predefined function to calculate the length. So I can do len of list, which is going to store the length of the list. I can actually take the length of the list simply by saying len list. So now if I say print list at len minus 1, what that's going to do is it's going to take the length of our list, which is 6, there it is, and it's going to subtract 1 to give me index 5. And there we go. I totally wrote the wrong name. len list. That's it. There we go. And sure enough, we get the same thing. Now, the last thing I want to talk about in this video is actually, there's 2 more things I want to quickly talk about. That's assigning values and adding values to our list. Because remember, a list is a dynamic data structure, meaning we can change the size. So you can modify values in a list in the same way that you access them. So we're just going to give the name of the structure and then the index. So if I say list at 0 equals 999, and then I print my list, what you'll notice is that we've modified that index 0 to 999. I could say list at len list minus 1 is equal to 99999. Oh, pardon me. Let's copy that and let's print it out again. And of course, there's my 4 nines. The last thing now, if I go list.append, if I do list dot, you'll notice a whole bunch of functions. And it actually goes up off the top of my page there, but you should see what. And there's lots here. You can actually open up the internet and do a Google search for list documentation. You'll get a list of all of these with more information. But I want to show you specifically this one up here called append, which is a little hard to see. So let's see if we can just bring this down a bit. There it is. And all I do is I do list.append, and then I can give it a value. So if I do list.append 76, and then I'm going to print my list again. And here you go. Let's drag this up. Notice that it's added 76 to the end of my list. And I could go list.append word, and then print my list. And notice now it's put word at the end. This is the thing about lists that's different than arrays. And if you've worked with Java, you've probably worked with arrays first. Is that lists can have a variety of different types of data contained in them. For the most part, in our examples, we're going to contain all data of the same type, but it's good just to keep that in the back of your head. As always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Have a great day.